take and the forensics that did more and more advance in the analysis it is doing, and the ransomware protection capabilities that we introduced in the last year. On the network side, it will be the analysis that we added on the last year through the new threat emulation report. So I will touch on those three on the first section, but then I will also drill into a lot of what is usually less visible innovations that we are doing on the back end that are greatly impacting the results of the analysis and the results of the emulation and of our zero-day protection. By all means, there are not hundreds. We don't have hundreds of people here. So if you have any questions, just jump. Just give your question. If we get into a time problem, I will defer it to the end. But don't be shy. It will be more interesting. And more interest for me, at least. So to recap for a second, if we are looking at the attack chain, the attack can come in different levels. Okay, we can look at it in the protocol level. We can look at it at the file and malware level. We can see CNC. We can see the activity on the box itself, and we are dealing with this. We have multiple technologies to deal with this in different levels. And the important thing to understand is we don't look at any of these engines as a silver bullet. Okay, so we don't see the question, I had the attack, but the antivirus blade didn't catch it, as a meaningful question we are usually handling. We are looking at it as a comprehensive solution, and we are trying to mitigate each attack in multiple levels. So even if an attack is taking a certain direction, a certain new direction, it will still trip on multiple other steps down the road. So when we are looking at it, we are looking at it as a holistic solution, which is, it's basically, and on the SandBlast, it's delivered, some of those blades are delivered on the gateway, some of these blades are delivered on the endpoint, some are in the cloud, some in the appliance, but they are all playing together in order to give a complete protection. This is the concept we are looking at it. And this is also supporting a number of different topologies. So it can be delivered either through a cloud service or an appliance on endpoints that are connected, which can go to a local appliance, but they can also go to the cloud. And a recent addition to the family, we just added a Mac client, which was a big request from many of the people in the room. Just by show of hands, how many people actually care about it? The Mac, so a number of people. For all of you, you are more than welcome to go to the tech room. We have there a working SandBlast agent on Mac that we are demonstrating, and we are recruiting people for the EAs that we are going to start, for the early availability we are going to start very soon. So you are more than welcome to drop me your contact, and we will be very happy to get you included. In terms of the protection cycle, so the way we are looking at it is, first of all, we are trying to do protection. And I suspect this is a theme that you heard again and again in different talks here, so I will not drill into it, but we are trying to protect as early as possible, not just detect. We have several blades or several capabilities that can do this, both on the network side and the endpoint side. As an immediate follow-up and automatic follow-up to this prevention, we are triggering analysis that is both through, you can see it through the TE report, you can see it through the SandBlast agent forensics. This analysis has two purposes. One is to give you a better understanding of what's going on in your environment and letting you do secondary steps like SOC analysis by forensic investigators, having a manual look and see maybe we missed something in the remediation, because we are triggering remediation automatically if you let us. But having a second look to see if you can take additional steps by your forensic investigators, remediation tools, so all of this is available. But the second purpose of it is that all the malicious parts are then shared with our intelligence cloud, which we are then adding it to our threat indicators, both as trivial indicators like IPs and hashes and stuff like this, but also as much more advanced indicators that I will share in a few minutes. And those like particular behaviors that identify specific attacks or specific vectors of attack, and then this feeds back to our protection, which enable us to, on the next cycle, prevent the attack even in the earlier stage of the attack. So conceptually, this is the model we are working on, and I will show this through two attacks, two celebrities attack. WannaCry and Bad Rabbit, and I will go through them and show the applicable technologies and innovations that went behind. Unfortunately, I don't look like this, as you can see. None of my developers. In a few slides, you will see a more realistic picture of how it's actually look like. So I will start with WannaCry. It was a very successful attack. To remind how it's worked, there was a number of, so it started with a SMB vulnerability that was leaked from the NSA, attacking one machine in the environment through this exploit, and then moved through a lateral movement to the entire environment. So, but if we look a little deeper into the attack, so this is how it looked like. So there was an SMB exploit. It was dropping executables that was then running through this exploit. The first things they did was checking a kill switch. The first things they did was looking to enable the attackers to control the spread of the attack. There was a kill switch. And you know, from those of you who following the gossip on the networks, it looked like it really was an experiment that got out of control. It didn't look like the Russians was actually intending to do the Ukrainians such a big damage. It was more of experiment that got out of hand probably. And then the first executable will generate a second executable that then would start the chain of events. So it would start the file encryption, generating ransom note, communicating outside on Tor communication to actually let the CNC notify that that the attack succeed, and this is the keys. And obviously, as usual, destroy the shadow copy of the machine in order to make sure that you cannot recover your files using Windows, and then persisting itself to make sure that it's coming back again and again at the end of the operation. And there are multiple researches dissecting this malware, and from there it was just going to the bank and get some money. So the easiest way to protect from this attack was using IPS. At the time of the incident, we already had IPS because it was shadow broker. It was already known before. There was already signatures. We actually had already signatures out to many of the attack vectors that were using this SMB exploit, and there was a number of IPS events that would trigger and prevent the attack. You know, providing there would be in a prevent mode, and that your machine was actually behind IPS, obviously. But again, this is why we are having multiple layers to block the attack in different places. So this was the first line of defense, and obviously the most preliminary and therefore the most cost-effective, if relevant. This is, by the way, more like how my developers look like. And from there it went to the SandBlast engine, to the SandBlast threat emulation, and there we have a number of engines that are detecting it, and you know, all of you are familiar with the emulation on the sandbox, but there are actually multiple technologies there. Okay, so if it's a Word document, it goes through an analyzer that is do static analysis of the macros to understand what's the potential risk there. We have static analyzer, basically, if you follow the hype of silence, it's pretty much the same. It's static analyzer looking at the code and understanding without even running the machine, is it a malicious software or not, and so on. And we are adding more and more of those. We are adding more and more of those engines all the time. Okay, so we added the ransomware detection the last year. We added emulation for Flash that is running the Flash forward and emulating it very fast to see if it is doing anything bad. We have traps and decoys that I will show in a second in a few slides. So I will go into a number of these. But the idea is that we are adding more and more tripping wires in our emulation environment and on the endpoint in order to make sure that the attack is going to actually trip on one of these tripping wires, and usually on many of them. Yeah, sure. Yes, so two answers. First of all, the emulation is only one layer that we are working. Okay, so the emulation has many engines in it, but we also have additional layers both on the gateway and on the endpoint itself. So for example, on the endpoint, we are looking on the real activities that happen on the machine. So if you are talking about evasions, for example, that can happen on a sandbox, they cannot happen on the machine, because if the evasion happens on the machine, the attack doesn't happen. So you kind of defeat the purpose. Okay, so it's important to have those multiple layers. This is one answer. A second answer is, just as you said, there is a lack of access there to the core OS, and definitely for the hardware, which is limiting technologies we are using, like we are using the CPU emulation in order to identify rope detection using the Intel CPU debug abilities. Is something that we are the only vendor doing. Obviously, you cannot do it on the cloud. Probably the best answer, which is, instead of me bullshitting you, there is the best answer is probably the NSS report. So if you're looking at the latest NSS report, we got our Sandbox Zero, our SandBlast technology, got the top score both in protection, which was we got 100%, no one else got it, and we also were the most cost-effective in terms of price per data. It's not our test; it's the NSS test. It's accessible from our website, and this is probably the best testimonial. Okay, so let's get back to the geeks. So one technology that came that we added last year was the ability to do network simulation behind the scene. Okay, the appliances and the threat emulation environment itself is not connected to the internet, and this is intentionally, okay, because we don't want the risk of leaking your documents that the attack can actually use the sandbox in order to leak documents that you have to the network. So it's essential to disconnect the emulation environment from the internet. On the other end, many attacks are using the internet in order to check that they are not behind the sandbox. And there we added the ability to, we kind of simulating a fake internet. And whenever the attack is generating requests, we are simulating answers that make sense. And those are actually stimulating most of the attacks. This is stimulating them to actually proceed in additional steps. So right now it's Windows between XP and Windows 10, and we are working on adding Mac as well. on the emulation environment. We are already adding Mac on the endpoint side, and we are now working on adding Mac in the emulation environment. So on the client side, it's coming out in a couple of months, and on the emulation, this is a roadmap that we are working on this year. Yeah, so it's possible to do it in the lab. We choose not to do it in our emulation because if you are doing this, there is a risk that the malware will actually leak information from your environment to the CNC, which is kind of defeating the entire purpose. So we choose not to go in this direction. We are doing this in our labs when we have control environment. So for those of you, just to get the impression, how many of you have seen the new threat emulation report? Not many. Good. I have a good. So I have something to show. So I assume you are familiar with the existing threat emulation report. We changed it recently. So this is how the report looks like today. It's much closer to how the forensic reports look like in terms of visuality and the ability to convey the data. So you can see on top the high-level information on the attack. You can see the attack vector, the files that were dropped on the machine and were used by the attack. And then an analysis per environment, an analysis of all the suspicious activities that we see there. So for those of you who are familiar with the forensic report from SandBlast agent, this is a similar concept. And then we actually generated a video or a slideshow to show you how the attack looked like. Okay, so this is for WannaCry. And the idea is to show you how the attack progressed. Okay, it's embedded in the report. You can see that it's dropped some file on the machine. Then immediately after running them, it deleted it, changed to the Ransom node, and then bring the Ransom application. So this is here to give you a very quick and easy way to actually visually see what the attack looks like, and then we can see the entire activity, the flow of activities that happen on the machine. So you can see either as a timeline, or you can also see it how it was in the past as all the activities that was going through the machine. So this is a much easier and more visual way to see the attack. Another technology we're using. How many of you have used before the SandBlast agent forensic? So the idea behind forensic is basically it's an EDR technology, endpoint detection and response. It sits on the machine, and it's monitor the activity on the machine all the time. It's looking all the time what's going on the machine, and record it on a local database that we have. Process activity, network activity, file activity, and so on. And basically, the data sits there and waits. It's quite efficient in storage, so we allocate about 1 gigabyte per machine, but it's on the machine, so most modern machines don't really care. And okay, and this storage can actually store the activity around 1 or 2 months back. Okay, so even attacks that are steals and take quite long to happen, we can build them back and see the activity. Now, whenever any of our security technology, it can be our agent technologies, it can be our gateway technologies, it can also be a third party. Okay, if you have another external application that detects an attack, it triggers the forensic system, and then the forensic is building basically the entire attack. So it's take the detection point, and from this detection point, it starts rolling back and say, okay, if this is, let's say this process went out to a bot, and our anti-bot found it, okay, but who created this process? And who created the files that was triggering this process? And what internet connection this file came from? And this way we can go all the way back to understand the attack, and then we can start to roll forward, and see, okay, what is all the effect that happened from this attack? Okay, so, and all of this is happening in an automated way, and the way this is captured is, if I will go back here, this is how this analysis looked for WannaCry. So we are showing you automatically the basic things that investigator will want to look at. Okay, is it a real attack? So we can have a look here. We can see all the suspicious activities that happen here. Someone just deleted the shadow copy, did the talk communication. We can see the entire list, dropped a file and then immediately delete them. So you can see it's probably not the friendliest. From this list, you can see it's probably not the friendliest software you can have. So this is here to build your confidence, and this is a real attack. Then you can immediately see what was the files that was causing this attack, and what are the affected files on the machine. Okay, and how it's got into your environment, and all of this is actually built by this. This is an automated analysis of how the attack happened, and we can go to any one of those. We can go into any one of those processes and see an entire list of what was happening, what registry keys were changed, what files were accessed. So this gives you a very quick automated analysis of the activity. Yes, definitely. Definitely. So the attack can be identified at this stage, for example. Okay? And then we are going, basically, because of this database we are building, we are going back in time and say, okay, but this came from this. This came from this. And we can see, and every one I will click, I will see the entire activities that was done by this process. So this is kind of a very effective tool to show you automatically how this is generating like few seconds basically after the attack is identified. So in few seconds you have something that your SOC can work with and utilize. Is it as good as your forensic investigator? Probably not. If you put your forensic investigator on it, it can probably give you some more information that is tightly relevant for your organization. Okay, but on the other end, it would probably take your investigators easily days to weeks to get to this level of report, and it can just start from here. And if you have an investigator, you can start from here and invest the additional hours or days in order to actually understand what's important to your environment. If you don't have a forensic investigator, this is definitely much easier than much cheaper than having a contractor for $200 per hour, $500 per hour, and for 100 hours to figure this one out. So we talked about this. And another technology we added in the previous year was the ransomware protection. So basically, this is a completely behavioral technology. We don't really have signatures for any ransomware. Okay, we are leveraging what I just showed in forensics. We are monitoring the behaviors through the forensic sensors that I just showed, and we are looking at them all the time, and we are looking for behaviors which are indicator for ransomware. Now, the second we see such a behavior, we are then triggering a forensic analysis you just seen. So this enables us to understand the entire scope of the attack. It enables us to understand what are all the files that are part of this attack. Okay? This enables us, in a single step, take this entire attack and quarantine the files and destroy the attack and kill the process of the attack. This is crucial because this is very different than the way most tools work, because most tools don't have forensic capability. So they will find, even if they have behavioral capabilities, they will look at the process that did the attack, kill it, which is nice. The problem is that I haven't seen for years I haven't seen a single attack that is a single step. It just doesn't exist anymore. So all attacks have downloaders, operating stage 1, that operating stage 2, that then do something that is doing the attack. Now, fine, if you have, you will find this something that is doing the attack and will kill it. But step 3, 2, and 1 and the dropper are still there, and they will just keep running on your machine and keep killing stuff, keep doing the damage. So it's crucial to have such an ability that can roll back, understand the entire attack, and treat it as a single incident and not only the symptom. The other thing that we have running all the time is we have the ability to back up any file. All the time we are monitoring the file activity on the machine. We are backing up every file that we think is changed might be related to a ransomware. At the stage that we are doing this, we have no idea if there is a ransomware on the machine. It's happened all the time. We have optimizations there, which is basically removing the performance impact completely. And if anyone is interested, I can discuss it later. But what it gives us, at the end of the forensic analysis, we know exactly which files were touched by the ransomware. So this means that we can go exactly to the point in time where this ransomware was touching the file, go to the previous copy and restore it and get your machine, and basically restore all your file to a good state. Back when WannaCry happened, this was, if I remember correctly, this was a weekend. At least for us, it was a weekend in Israel. We were already at home. We were basically rushing back to the office to analyze and understand what's going on. It was obvious that there was a big deal going on. Way before we got to the office, this was still a hardcore daytime working day for the European SEs. So the SEs in Europe already posted a video in YouTube showing how they are infecting machines with WannaCry and then anti-ransomware recover it and bring back the files. So we didn't know WannaCry in advance. Okay, we obviously didn't have any signatures for it. But we are looking from the behavioral point of view. We don't really care. We just see someone doing a ransomware activity on the machine, we recovered it. So you can see that basically we covered between TE, between threat emulation, IPS, and the SandBlast agent, you can pretty much see how we covered each one of the steps of the attack. Okay, I can show you in the forensic report how we saw the Tor communication, how we showed the shadow copy deletion, which was actually one of the biggest indicators that indicated us that there is a ransomware. And you can see how each one of those was identified by the different blades. I will jump over this. I will jump over the details of this attack to show you, to go and show you some other technologies. So basically, we'll keep adding more and more of this. So I want to touch a couple of them that we are doing right now. One is the ability to handle credential thefts. If you look at the bad rabbit attacks that I just jumped over, one of the critical steps there was applying Mimikatz, which is a credential theft technology, in order to steal the credentials of the user and use it to lateral movement. And we are now identifying this credential theft. We are blocking it, and we are also using it as a trigger that is telling us that there is an attack. This is one technology. I will touch for a couple of seconds another one. We added a lot of behavioral detection, which is anti-ransomware is one of them. It's basically a behavioral technology, and we are and all the rest are basically keep adding. There is a lot of machine learning technologies that are now running in the background, and this is heavily supported by our huge amount of data. But last thing I want to touch at is a technology called Sentry. Basically, what we are doing there is we are looking at the core behavior of attacks. And the idea there is that, let's take a server, for example. The core behavior of server didn't change in years, okay? And this is the forensic report for server. We were able to look. We looked at 2016. We looked at server, which is the most prevalent attacks for the last 2 years on the internet, okay? And we see, we actually carved out what is the core behavior of server. And we wrote a behavioral signature, let's say, of how server behaves. Okay, this didn't change since 2016. So there was 4 major generations of server, but the same behavior we indicated on server on 2016 is still catching every server variant since. So I'm not even talking about mutations. I'm talking about significant generations. And by doing this, we can actually cover each one of the big families and be agnostic to their mutations and be agnostic to their generation, which is a huge coverage of the attack landscape. So we are out of time. If anyone has any question, please approach me because I don't want to block the next speaker. And thank you very much.